Electric Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's album review is on Missing Persons' second album called Rhyme and Reason. This is their second time on the channel. I did review their debut album called Spring Spring Sessions M, which I gave a 61 out of 100, around the low score of a good album. Coincidentally, just recently, or maybe a few months ago, I got a copy of Color of Your Life, and that's actually got it sealed, which is strange to get a original copy from 1986 still sealed. And then I have their EP over here as well. But yeah, this is their second album released in 1984. Um, it's interesting because the Spring Session M has obviously their iconic songs, most of their iconic songs, if not all their iconic songs. And but in my opinion, this album is more cohesive and a better overall album. And in some ways, it's a little bit more timeless than even the original, their debut album. It's sometimes it's hard to have 12 songs on an album and it still feel like it's cohesive and tight. And I think that's the opportunity with the first album, not being a better scored album, is there's a few duds in there. Wouldn't say duds, but some fours and fives in there that I would sort of rate that are okay or pretty good songs. But for the most part, there's a lot of six and sevens in there. But unfortunately, there's some four and fives, and so it kind of averages out into the six. Where maybe if they took off two of my least favorite songs, just for example, it'd probably be closer to a seven. It would probably be a better album. But when I compare the two, but after comparing this album, I think this album is a little bit better. It may not have the powerful tracks and a groundbreaking track like "Walking L.A." or "Words," but I really enjoy these tracks in here. I think they're very underrated, and they're maybe a little bit more poppy, maybe a little bit more polished, but I really like some of the songs in here. I think there's more good songs on here, more very good songs on here than than on Words, and there's less songs, so it's a little bit tighter album. Um, so obviously the band members of Missing Persons, Dale Bosio, she has such a cool voice and she's so unique, and especially in the verses in this album, I really like the way she sings, and whether it's the track "Surrender Your Heart," where she sings nice and softer and a little bit more pretty, or she's got a little bit more poppy, dancey, like in "Now Is the Time" or "Right Now." But she sings a lot of verses really smooth in here, and where I think Missing Persons really shine is when you have their kind of aggressive new wave sound and a little bit of a punk, sort of post punk, but a little bit faster drumming, so the track is upbeat. And then she's really hitting in her pockets. And then Patrick O'Hearn and Chuck Wild on the keyboards, they really do some nice kind of melodic things in between the verses, and sometimes they're a little bit poppy, some of these tracks, but the verses are really underrated and really smooth. And I really like the keyboard sounds in a lot of the songs on this album. Of course, there's also Patrick O'Hearn, which I just mentioned. He on keyboards, and I think he does bass on some songs too. He always has like a cool sounding keyboard sounds compared to most bands of this time. I think of a lot of like uh, keyboard bands around this time. Maybe some of the lower ones, the ones that are sort of one hit wonders, or maybe not your Depeche Mode or New Order or something like that, but some of the lesser known, maybe one hit wonders, their keyboard sounds are generally a lot more mainstream sounding and a lot more sort of over the top poppy. Um, Here, Patrick O'Hearn really kind of does some like a little bit more melodic, and the cadence of the songs, the cadence of the keyboards and the coloring of the keyboard sounds, they don't necessarily sort of are poppy. They're a little bit more toward, maybe it could be more towards his new age, which after this album he does, after the second album, Color Your Life, he does. Well, I guess around this time he did his first ambient album, 18 Dreams, which I also reviewed on my channel. I think that one's from '85, so in between the two albums. But he always generally, or he always seems to have a different, uh, not poppy sounding keyboard in these songs. And when you think of like the more straightforward new wave of their debut album, they are a little bit, they're very cool sounding, but they are still a little bit more mainstream or out front. Where these are a little bit more reserved, and I really like that. They have some really nice tones, um, especially in the verses. The choruses can be a little cheesy on missing person songs for sometimes for me. Like when I think of Right Now or Give, like the choruses are a little bit kind of corny, but all the verses on a lot of these songs are really strong in my opinion. And then you have Wayne Sarus, I think you say it Kasurulo. Um, I'm horrible at pronouncing names, but obviously he played in Duran Duran, and he's somewhat underrated in some respects. I think he does a pretty good job on background vocals. Sometimes he goes a little bit too far on the background vocals, which kind of leads it to like a little bit of cheesy land, like in Give. But sometimes the unique kind of sounding guitar he has on songs, like the bridge of Give, um, like the bridge of the Give, the track called Give. It's pretty unique. So I think he does some cool edgy kind of guitar sounds and does pretty good on vocals. Sometimes he kind of goes a little bit over the edge. Um, Maybe a little bit over the edge in some of the videos too. He kind of is kind of out there, like trying to be like the I wouldn't say the lead, but he's sort of he's kind of out there in front doing his thing, but it comes off kind of cheesy with his kind of, I don't know, some of the guitars he uses are kind of a little bit I guess over the top. Maybe they're cool for the time. I'm not a guitar guy, but some of the guitars are kind of like look a little corny. Um, and then also Chuck Wild on keyboard, which I know him from. He did some side projects, ambient projects in the '90s and 2000s under the name Liquid Mind, which are pretty good. But check out if you're interested in like new age stuff. I would check out Patrick O'Hearn and Chuck Wild under Liquid Mind, and really that's what helped give Missing Persons an edge over a lot of bands in the style for me purposely, um, personally, because they have a new wave sound. They're a little bit punk. They have a little bit driving sort of keyboard. I mean, sort of drum machine beats. But then also they got some talented keyboard players that really kind of give some unique sounds. They're not just keyboard players playing a main riff. They're interested. You can tell from their career, their solo careers, they're more interested in doing more atmospheric and more different sounding keyboards, and really that does a great job of giving Missing Persons a unique sound. The bass player, sometimes that's Patrick O'Hearn. I think sometimes it might be somebody else. I'm not 100% sure on that, but sometimes the bass can be good, like in Give. Other tracks, for the most part, it's very low in the mix, and this album is also a very mid-range sounding album. It's not a great sounding album. It's unfortunately a lot of middle '80s albums too much in the mid-range. Um, Too thin. Not enough low end. Not enough dynamics in the high range because there's so much mid range. It's kind of like it's overloading. You're listening in my opinion, as far as like hearing some of the differences of the lows and highs. You're just kind of inundated with such a strong mid range. There's 10 tracks on here, so I'll just go through them real quick. The Closer That You Get, nice keyboards, cool sounding track. Really like this track. It's really hard to pick a favorite on this album. There's a lot of good ones that are very consistent, and the first three, The That You Get, Give, which was a single, and Now Is the Time for Love. all 7 stars even. I couldn't really choose a favorite between those tracks. They all are really good tracks, and I really couldn't favor one over the other one. Um, so yeah, 7 stars for The Closer That You Get, 7 stars for Give. I really like the keyboard at 1:15, 1 minute 15 seconds. Really sublime sounding keyboards. Really love it, and it goes so well with her voice. Love the verses on Give. Again, the chorus a little cheesy. Kind of brings it down to a 7. I would have been a little higher if it wasn't such a kind of poppy sounding chorus. And then Now Is the Time for Love. This one's a little bit more consistent, but not the highs of the first 2 tracks, I feel like. But nice groove, nice bass line, cool guitar sounds, tight song. 7 stars as well. And then my favorite track of the album, Surrender Your Heart. I give 7.5 stars. It's so smooth, and she stays in the sweet spot. Dale sings it really nicely. She doesn't have the best voice. She definitely has a unique voice, but on this particular sound, I think it works really well. And she does her little inflections, her kind of punk inflections. I would think like Gwen Stefani really kind of took a little bit of Dale Bozio's style in the ways, the way she kind of sings. Maybe Cyndi Lauper sort of did that too. Cyndi Lauper kind of does some inflections where her voice does that, that higher voice where it kind of tweaks up and kind of is really unique. Um, I was thinking of like the Shabom Shabom, that one song that Cyndi Lauper does. Is it Mbop? Not Mbop, but the She Bop. She kind of does that Mbop. Yeah, I'm gonna review a Hanson record next. Um, but She Bop she does that kind of quirky voice where it kind of goes in the high pitch. I think maybe Cyndi Lauper sort of took that from Missing Persons. I'm not sure who was first, but they're right around the same time. But maybe Gwen Stefani did. But Surrender Your Heart, her voice really works well in the slow range here, and the guitar sounds great. One of the better choruses, just nice and smooth. 7.5 stars. Clandestine People, not bad. 5.75 stars. Pretty good track. Right Now is also a single on the album. There was 3 singles on this album. This one's kind of poppy. Again, I like the verses and the melody. Really nice. 6.75 stars. And then my second favorite track, All Fall Down. 7.25 stars. Smooth, funky bass line, nice pace, good harmonies. I wish they kind of extended the musical part. There's a lot of goodness going on in this song, but I wish they kind of extended a little bit. Um, but I love the way it kind of winds down at the end. I just wish it went on a little bit longer. But 7.25 stars. And then track number 8 is my least favorite song. Kind of hurts the album score in my opinion. It's the only track I have below being pretty good. I have it at 4.5 stars. It's okay. Maybe a little hectic, but it's not bad. It's just kind of, I don't know. It kind of does loses a little bit of smoothness, loses a little bit of the edge. Just kind of sounds like a frantic, I don't know, just kind of over the top for I don't know why reason. It just doesn't work for me. It just too, I don't know, just kind of, I can't get lost in any kind of sound in there, and I don't think the chorus is very good either. So it's just kind of like it's okay. Yeah, 4.5 stars. Track number 9, pretty good track. It's 5.5 stars. It reminds me a little bit like Gary Newman, the pace and how she sings. It sounds very much like him. Some good sounds in here, but the bridge and the chorus quite aren't quite there for me. The last stanza is a little bit better, adding a sort of airy guitar and a nice harmony. Comes out a little bit more, but still it's a pretty good track. 5.5 stars. And then it ends on a solid moment. The track number 10 called If Only the Moment. 6.75 stars. Right there on very good. So I add up the stars and a 65 out of 100, right in the middle of a good album again for them. I gave it a couple extra points. I gave it 2 extra points for just the catchiness of this album, and I think it's kind of underrated in a timeless way. And I think if any of you guys know vaporwave and synthwave and darkwave and any of those kind of genres that are vintage sounding, but kind of you could still play them today and they would go in really well with what's going on today and those sounds. I could play all fall down I could play The Closer That You Get as a DJ. I could play Give. I could play Now Is the Time. If it was lower, sort of solemn, wouldn't say solemn, but more of a moodier part on a dance floor, and I could play Surrender Your Heart, which is my favorite song on here, I would do it. But just a lot of really good songs that tie in really well to being a timeless sound of what's going on in synthwave and yeah, just some of the newer kind of retro sounds that are kind of imitating sounds like this. I think this goes over great with that. But yeah, there's five tracks in here that are very good, and one that's really close. So it's almost very good, by itself. So it really aligns really strongly with the score. If you take out that 4.5 star track, that kind of the extra points I gave kind of bring it up to that anyway. So um, it might not, again, it might not have the power of the first album. Might not have the iconic tracks like Walking in LA and Destination Unknown and Words, but this is a little bit more cohesive an album, a little bit more enjoyable. It's kind of whimsical a little bit, but it's still kind of power pop, but also still new wave. And some good keyboard sounds, some good guitar work, and some good harmonies in here. And I think that's where this album wins over the other album is there's more good songs that have better melodies and more good harmonies than in the last album, and it just fits better as a 10 track album versus 12 tracks. So yeah, 67 out of 100. I can't really think of any down opportunities for the album. Um, it's maybe the only thing I could say is I would like a little bit more experimentalism on the album and maybe some more instrumental parts. For the most part, they're all pretty traditional pop songs: open verse, chorus, back to verse, go to chorus, and like they're all really kind of there's only three of the 10 tracks go over 4 minutes. None of them go over 5 minutes. I would love to hear them kind of experiment and take a different approach to making. Even though I know they're a pop band and they're a new wave band and they have a little bit of post punk in them, so that lends itself to make a tight, cohesive, kind of tight track. Like I'd like to see some sort of experimentalism in the tracks, and considering what great keyboard players they have and how smooth Dale's voice is and how creative it could be, I think if you took those elements and now and you did something kind of experimental or more alternative and sort of drag a track out for 5, 6, 7 minutes and just see where it goes and see if they can do kind of a more epic track that kind of has a lot more flows and maybe even a moodier track that just kind of sits in a sweeter spot with a different pace and kind of because there's so much upbeat tracks on here. It'd be nice if there was kind of a because Surrender Heart is my favorite track and that one's kind of on the more laid back, smoother. So I would think if they did another track like this and it was more of a longer, ever flowing kind of track, like it could have been a real balance to all this really solid, more pop kind of new wave sound. I think it would have balanced it out, but still a really good track, really good album. I think kind of underrated in their history and kind of underrated when you think of new wave albums. And if you're into vaporwave now and you're into like post punk and stuff like that, and you want a little bit of electronic in your post punk, I think this Missing Persons is a really good band that kind of fits in that kind of very unique category and kind of I wouldn't say it's a hole in my collection, but it fits nicely in that hole to where it kind of ties the retro feel and a lot of the electronic vaporwave and synthwave sounds that are bands that play today, like like Gunship or Midnight or uh, there's some other ones I just can't think of. Was it Atlas FM 84 and uh, just that one with 1983 in it. I can't think of the other one, but there's a lot of like vaporwave, synthwave, more synthwave bands that sort of they would really tie in well with the sound. So in a lot of ways, this is very this sound is very timeless, and I think it goes really well with what's going on today. But yeah, anyways, if you'd like me to review something by yours, or if you'd like to review another album, just email me below, and we can talk about reviewing something that you request. All right, thanks so much.
Electric Cafe.